Okay, so this is my classroom management final project. So for my philosophy, kind of all of the different theories that I kind of associated with the most was the reducing stress theory. A lot of which talked about like positive communication and responsibility and reflection and inquiry and consequences, just because I feel like it's really good to just focus on, being clear with the students and giving them responsibility and encouraging them to reflect and ask questions and to set clear consequences. That was one big thing when I did the interviews that one of the parents said that they wanted when their student was misbehaving was for the teacher to have set up clear expectations and consequences for when those expectations weren't followed through with, and that the teacher then followed through with those consequences, and that the student knew what to expect in disobeying those. So something that I found was this positive communication notes, both with like sending notes back home to the parents and giving notes to the students. I think it's just really good to write specific notes to them so that they can kind of use that as motivation in knowing that they are doing something that they should be proud of. For Democratic Classroom, I have a couple different things on here. One thing is just kind of like leadership, both with morning meetings and like with this leadership role application. So they just kind of write their strengths and what they kind of would like to do for leadership. And then with the morning meetings, that at first I would start off doing the morning meetings like led by me, just so they can get an idea of what it's about and how it goes and everything. And then they would start to lead the morning meetings just to get that leadership. There's also these little centers. They have little clothespins, and then there would be a rule of, this is how many students would go at each center. So that way they have choices into what centers that they would go to, and eventually they'd probably rotate through all of them. But then they would at least feel like they have that choice in there. And then just with this choice board, preferred activity time choices, just other times during the day when they have choices, there's all these different pictures of the options that they have, just so that they feel like they have a choice. With motivation, I really found this cool. It's a student interest survey. It just kind of goes through all of the different things that the students like, what they would do with certain money, what their favorite subjects are, their favorite sports, favorite animals, things like that, which I think that's really important because obviously, there are core standards and things that we have to teach with in mind, but I think one of the biggest motivators for students is something that they're interested in. So if we collect this information about our students, then we can gear our lessons towards them so that they feel motivated to learn. I also found this really cool. It's a teacher versus students classroom management game. So this one specifically would be kind of like a whole class reward system. So it just has different guidelines on there. Okay, when the students do this, the teacher gets a point. When the students do this, they get a point. And then you would kind of see the scoreboard going throughout the day. There's also this SMART goal setting. I think it's really important for students to develop that intrinsic motivation more than just the extrinsic motivation. And so if they don't know it already, you would teach them the acronym SMART, and they would set some goals for themselves, and you'd reflect over those so that they use those as motivation throughout the year to get better and to improve themselves. And then for my rules and procedures, this is one that I found that I really liked. It says, respect yourself, respect your classmates, respect your environment, raise your hand, raise your confidence, raise your expectations, and follow class procedures, follow all directions, and follow school policies. So what I think is really cool, the first thing is the respect. When I was interviewing the parents and the students, they had rules. It was really their teacher just had general rules about respect, and that was mainly it. And they really liked that because they felt like it really covered a lot of things. So I think definitely having this respect yourself and your classroom, your classmates, and your environment really covers a lot of bases. But then I think it's really important with rules to not just feel like the students are limiting themselves with the rules, but also what I love is this raise your hand, raise your confidence, raise your expectations. It's more than just, rules are more than just putting these guidelines in place, but also putting, your expectations. You want your students to be confident. You want them to raise their expectations. You want them to feel like they can succeed. And then with following class procedures and all directions in school policies, I think that just goes above and beyond to help them to better understand that they need to be following those things. And then with prevention, some of my favorite ones were attention signals. I didn't write this on here, but one thing that I've seen is there are some videos going around of different attention signals. I mean, we all kind of know them, the clapping, the different sayings, and then they repeat something. And I think something that definitely links prevention with kind of having a democratic classroom is letting the students kind of figure out things that they would like to use as attention signals. You know, I've seen this video where certain lines of songs or different things that students know, they'll turn into attention signals, and then the students feel like it's kind of cool and like they understand it, they appreciate it a little bit more, and then they also feel like they have a say in those attention signals. And then, let's see. Yeah, I think that's it with that. And then with the classroom, this is the one that I made. So I just really love that there's a lot of space with the student tables, that they're in groups. And this will just be one example of it. I think I would, in the end, like to have a lot of changing in the way that the students' tables and desks are moved around. I think it's good for students to experience kind of a different feel for how it is. And honestly, I think different classes probably will thrive differently depending on the arrangement of the classroom. But then you've got like the teacher's desk and the kidney table. There's space near everything. And it's good that the computers are facing out where the teacher can see. But I also just love the little areas in the corner where reading can happen and kids can be comfortable at the times of day when it's most appropriate. And then down here I've got some flexible seating options. There's all sorts of different things that you could have as a teacher. And something that I think is really important is that the students get the flexible seating, that they have an opportunity in certain times of day to choose where they're sitting, but also using this as a motivator. You know, we've got these flexible seating expectations, and if those expectations aren't followed through, then they may lose their privileges for the flexible seating, which I think goes back to that prevention and motivation, so that they feel like they're getting privileges because they're behaving well. And then, yeah, I think it's good as well for them, though, to have the regular seating. I think that as teachers, we need to remember that there are going to be teachers that do things a little bit differently than we do. And I think it's almost unfair to the students to set up an expectation that all of their teachers might be like this, or to make them feel like they're missing out a lot when they go to the next grade and their teacher doesn't do things the same way. So I think it's really important in that way to give the students the time in the regular seating and kind of doing some things in the ways that other teachers might, just because it helps them to understand that there are going to be things they're going to have to adjust to as they go from classroom to classroom. And that's my management plan.